Welcome to a product demonstration of Jama software. In today's world of rapidly growing complexity and competition, the need for modern solutions that enable a company to deliver complex systems faster and with confidence has become in itself a requirement. Jama software exists today to solve this problem. At its core, Jama software brings requirements management into a modern era by providing industry-leading end-to-end traceability combined with enterprise collaboration, in turn allowing companies to have clarity across teams and products from concept to delivery. These core assets enable those teams to completely manage risk, change, test, and compliance throughout the product delivery lifecycle. Let's get started and dive into how this is accomplished. One of the consistent feedbacks we get from analysts like Gartner and many of our customers is that Jama is easy to use, especially in comparison to a lot of the legacy document-centric software out there today. As we walk through the demonstration, hopefully you will agree that adoptability is going to be much easier than anticipated because of the user-friendly environment. The screen that you see when you log in is a user-specific screen that allows you to see the projects that you've most recently been working in. From a collaborative perspective, you also gain insight into any conversations that are currently open that you've been brought into, as well as any reviews that you are currently a part of that have not yet been finished. In this demonstration, we are using a dataset modeling a medical device company. We are building a hearing aid. You'll notice that this is a project view consisting of a project dashboard as well as an explorer tree, which structurally lays out all of the components that make up our system from concept to delivery. One of the main assets on our project dashboard is the relationship rules diagram, which acts as a mechanism to aid in creating consistency in your trace relationships. In this case, we are taking market input and breaking it down into system, design, and subsystem requirements. From our system requirements, we are able to manage risk as well as our engineering and development tasks. We are further able to manage our validation and verification throughout, enabling us to support a V-model development process, tackling everything from concept to delivery. Keep in mind that Jama is extremely flexible, allowing it to conform to whatever your process might be, whether it is waterfall, agile, software or hardware, or hybrid of either. I can change projects quickly into more of an automotive-focused demonstration, where you can see that we have a similar workflow with a couple differences around hazard and safety management and a couple more layers of verification. Whatever your process is, whatever your needs are, Jama can be configured to fit. Even though Jama is highly configurable, it is also extremely user-friendly, even from an administrative perspective. We also offer professional services that assist with not only training your teams, but understanding your process and helping you configure Jama to get started and have success right out of the gate. You'll notice that from a dashboard perspective, we are also tackling things like status of our validation testing and health of our risks and status of our system requirements. You can customize the dashboard to, for example, track system requirements missing validation tests for more of a QA coverage. To the left of our dashboard, we have our Coverage Explorer, where we are structuring the item types represented in our trace diagram and organizing them hierarchically. We have a full spectrum of customers that are developing products that are somewhat simple to extremely complex. In fact, we here at Jama are developing Jama using Jama. We also work with very complicated semiconductor, aerospace, defense, medical, and automotive companies, so the spectrum of our customers is quite broad. I'm going to start by focusing on the market requirements that we have received. You can think of this as a document of market requirements. The ability to bring this in via Word or Excel is very simple. Also, the ability to author within Jama, which is the hope, is also available. So being able to add new requirements right from this screen is easy. You are able to view the document in a spreadsheet format with inline editing capabilities where we can add and remove columns as needed, where we can filter as we wish on the content we're viewing. We can also switch over to the document view, allowing familiarity from the document world you might have come from, but allowing a lot more capability behind the scenes. So once again, you have inline editing capabilities from this view, yet we can drill down into an individual requirement. Looking at the spreadsheet of market requirements, there's a couple of unique columns showing us the amount of people that have been interacting on each one, the amount of conversations we're having, and the amount of related content both upstream and downstream. Drilling into an individual market requirement, you'll now see all of the fields of information that we have decided we're going to have contained within a market requirement. This market requirement exists within the full document we were previously viewing. From the single item view, we have a handful of functionality available to us. We can start with the version history showing us everything from the creation of a requirement up to the current state of it. At any time, we can look at the differences field by field from one version to the next. We can also clearly see when the last changes were made and who made the change. This allows us to have a clear view of what we've done over time. This can be extremely useful in a regulated environment where everything needs to be tracked. When I talk about enterprise collaboration and how it is ingrained into the requirements capabilities within Jama, I'm referring to the ability to track the decisions that have been made that lead to the changes that we make. This can be done in a proactive effort of bringing in everyone who might be impacted by a change, or reactively responding by requesting clarification on the change that has been made. At the market requirement level, we're tracking a couple of threaded conversations in context with the requirement that we're talking about. We can clearly see that Vince has started a conversation, and it looks like Christy came in with an issue that got resolved. We are able to track not only the beginning of a conversation, but clearly understand the resolution that came out of it. I can start a conversation with a new group or an individual. I can even bring in an outside stakeholder via their email address, even if they have never seen Jama. Let's request to change this to a 2018 requirement. The ability to frame comments as questions, issues, and decisions is part of Jama's decision-making framework, which is designed to enable quick turnaround and transparency across teams. I've sent this request to Alexander, the development team, as well as someone who is not a user in the system. Jama allows you to respond through email to the notification you receive. The response updates the thread of conversation in context with the requirement. This allows you to include more people in the decision that gets made, as well as increase adoptability by allowing multiple means of communication. When you have churn, reorganization, or someone leaves the company, or maybe you came back from a 2-week vacation, these capabilities allow transparency around change and the decisions that lead to that change. From here, I can quickly make a decision, which is clearly identified. I can drill into the specific requirements that the conversation is about. Once again, reviewing the version history of any changes that have been made in line with the conversations that we're having. Eventually, we'll come to a point where we feel that we have in our hands a solid direction to start with and proceed to the review process. When your requirements are ready for formal review, they can be sent to the review center. In starting a review, you can define a deadline, you can choose a couple other capabilities within there. In this case, I'm choosing to show related downstream content, so not only am I reviewing my market requirements, but I can also have insight into the system requirements that they are being generated from. I can choose who is going to take part in the review process, whether they are a reviewer, meaning that they are able to give input, or an approver, meaning that they can also approve and reject. Similar to the comments section we talked about earlier, we can invite outside stakeholders via email address who are not regular users of Jama. We can choose to require electronic signature, and finally, we can customize the notification, inviting everyone to be a part of the review process. In this example, we're reviewing a set of system requirements, and as a moderator, I can see all of the approvals and rejections that have been taking place, as well as any of the collaboration that's been happening around individual requirements. All of the stakeholders are able to collaborate in a group manner, allowing them to have more constructive responses themselves. Statistics are available showing everyone taking part in the review, what their role is, and how much time they've spent. We can get clarity into how close we are to hitting our deadline. Maybe I need to reach out to Aaron to make sure that he picks up the pace. Or maybe I'm just glad he gave any input at all, and it was really Kevin and George that I needed a full coverage review from. Back in the review process, as an approver, I can approve or reject based on feedback. I am able to highlight sections that we want to respond about. Once we have made changes, those changes happen back in the project, so the review process is segregated from the internal conversations and work being done at a project level, yet as change happens, we can pull that change into the next revision of a review. You'll notice that we are currently on version 3 of this review, and as an approver, I can actually filter down to things that were modified since the previous revision. Within version 2, I can actually see that 2 items were updated since version 1, and I can see the specific redline differences from the previous revision to the next and the conversations that led to that change. This allows us to filter down to not only what needs your attention from revision to revision, allowing us to ignore all of the approved requirements where the approval persisted through because they did not change, and very quickly get to the end. From here, we can transition to the next revision. If in this revision we have no changes and everyone signs off, we can close out the review, I can approve and sign, or maybe I still want to see some changes and I can request a new revision. Back at our home screen, let's touch once more on the collaborative insights. We see the open discussions we are a part of, and we see the open reviews that we are currently assigned to. As these disappear, the work that needs your attention starts to decrease. Coming back to our project, we can now assume that we have fully reviewed our market requirements. Eventually, the entire document will either be approved or partially rejected, and we can carry forward with what's been approved into the next stages of work. In this case, getting down to the system requirements. Traceability is one of the leading components of value for requirements management, especially in regulated environments where traceability is required and allows you to demonstrate regulatory compliance. Any requirements management solution available is going to offer some form of traceability. With Jama, we have modernized requirements management by taking a lot of the concepts around traceability and improving both visibility and usability, allowing users to generate a much clearer end-to-end trace model from concept to delivery. Now that we've locked down our market requirements, we can easily add related content. From an existing market requirement, I can add a new system requirement, which is now automatically related to the requirement that it came from. Trace relationships are shown at the requirement level, where you can clearly see what is directly above and directly below. I can see a lot of system requirements downstream from this market requirement, and because we've changed the market requirement earlier, I can see that a lot of suspect flags have been turned on for the system requirements related. We are able to subscribe and subscribe others to the content that changes, so when a change happens, I can get notified via email. I maybe have just received a notification that a market requirement has changed, and looking at the requirements that I'm working on, I can see there is a suspect flag turned on. As a real-life example, I could come into the version history of this market requirement and do a quick comparison to try to understand what specifically was modified from one version to the next and who made that change. I can now bring in what we call connected users, which is showing us everyone who has had any impact on this requirement, and clearly see that Aaron was the last person to make a modification. I can now bring Aaron into a conversation to ask for clarity on the changes that he recently made, and hopefully get a quick response here, allowing me to understand how this impacted me and if it needs to make a change downstream. Once I receive a notification back from Aaron stating that the change has no downstream impact, I can clear the impact flag and move on. If, however, the change does impact related content, we can quickly bring in impacted users into the conversation so that we are able to involve everyone who has any impact across the entire spectrum of the project related to the requirement changing. This is one of the many ways that Jama is trying to incorporate collaboration to speed up the communication between teams, and to make sure that we're all on the same page and to get our products out the door faster with confidence so we can minimize risk or confusion between what a customer asked for versus what was actually delivered. Now that we understand a little bit of how change can be managed, looking back at the system we are working on, let's assume that we are now executing tests against development tasks that we have derived from our system requirements. We have a couple of different visualizations that allows us to understand the full spectrum impact and trace relationships at a full-scale view. We are looking at our Coverage Explorer, in which we can see at a high level all of the market requirements that are included in the market requirements document. For any one of these, I can select it and see the full traceability down from the system requirements through the development tasks that are being worked on down into the verification testing that is being done, even to the defect that we discovered. I can see the prioritization and status of any other fields of information I find valuable to let me know the health of, for example, the next release we are currently working on feature by feature. I can clearly see that we are in a build for a couple of features, and the status of each task related to the feature we are building against. For a recently completed task that we have tested against, it is clear that testing resulted in a defect. We can trace backwards from the failure to not only understand the test and task that it is a result of, but we can also understand the feature that it affects and the high priority marker requirement that it is attached to. We can see from the dashes that we are lacking trace relationships. As an example, stories lacking relationships to test cases. We also have a more interactive trace view available from the document or list view within a project. From either of these views, along with the icons for document and list view, you will see the trace view icon that, when selected, brings up an interactive window displaying the trace relationships in relation to the requirements you are viewing. We can see the marker requirements again, leading into our system requirements. Any one of these I can mouse over to get a better understanding of it. I can add in new columns of information, so if I need to understand the status and prioritization at different levels, I can do this. I can save these views so that they're quickly accessible at another time. Coming back to our home screen, you can now quickly get back to the view that is important to you. Each level of the trace model allows me to customize the fields of information that I want to view, including the failure of some of my tests and the status of different levels of requirements. I can start to see where I'm lacking trace relationships. In this case, a system requirement is lacking validation tests downstream. From here, I can now relate it to any existing test that I have, or I could relate it to a brand new validation test with the relationship automatically created. To recap what we have just covered so far, we have talked about general interaction with Jama, we've talked about collaboration, both on a day-to-day basis and on a more of a formal review process. We walked through full end-to-end traceability, showing us all the different ways we can visualize and connect both people and content. Two of the areas we have not yet covered are test management and enterprise reuse. Jama has the capability to manage manual testing within the application natively. Test management within Jama is very important, again, for complete end-to-end traceability. From a dashboard perspective, we're able to see the status of our testing against the requirements that we might be putting out the door in the future. We are able to understand if we have full requirements-based test coverage through custom filters showing us, in this case, system requirements that have no downstream relationships to tests. This filter produces 5 results. From here, I can now drill into any one of these requirements and add a related validation test. As I do so, this filter will decrease in results. When it produces nothing, I will have full test coverage. We are now confident that we have full test coverage. We can now create a test plan. You can have as many test plans as you need. Within a test plan, you can group and add as many of the related tests that you have created. For each build you receive, you can generate a new set of test runs to be ran against any new development. I can run a test, assign it to myself, and see the current status of testing that we're working through. One of the tests might potentially result in a defect. The new defect can be logged right from this location. We can add any screenshots or any extra instructions on how we obtained the defect in the first place. We can save the defect back to our project. We now see that we have one failure and everything else for the most part is passing. We do still have one in progress. I'm going to start this, assign it to myself, and we can run through the test. We will close it out and now we're good to go. Once again, coming back to our dashboard, we can see the current state of testing. And coming back to our project, I can see the new defect that we've just discovered. This new defect is automatically related to the test run and validation test that it resulted from, allowing us to very quickly see the steps that resulted in the creation of the defect. At the validation level, we'll always be able to see all of the testing results for every test cycle that we've ran through. And coming back to our full coverage view, we're able to get a good understanding of that defect that we just discovered and the impact that it has across the board. This might be a good area where we want to bring in connected users again, not only alerting the QA team working on it, but the engineers and product teams upstream so that we all have a clear understanding of the potential impact of what we just came across that might cause us to need to push features out the door for a later release in order to get this fixed. At least now we have everyone aware on the same page and that conversation will be tracked. That covers requirements-based test management on a very high level. The last area of Jama I would like to cover is enterprise reuse. When I say enterprise reuse, I'm talking about the ability to reuse content that you've already worked on to eliminate rework from project to project. At the most simple state, reuse could just be a project template with no content. Reusing this can carry through the permissions and any other settings that you may have and the project structure that you adhere to, allowing you to maintain more consistency from project to project and allowing you to eliminate the work it took to build this out in the first place. That's a very simple concept, but let's take that up to another level. When you have product variants, or when you have similar component functionality that you utilize from product to product, it can be extremely valuable and time-saving to reuse previously developed functionality. In this case, we have a Clear 3 hearing aid. This is the third generation of the product. We have a Clear 2 which has already been released to the public. We were able to reuse the entire system, allowing us to connect everything within the project to the previous model. You can see that this requirement also exists in my Clear 2 project and it is currently in sync. I select my synchronized items view and see that there is a Clear 2 version of which I can compare against and show the specific differences between the two. I am now able to see everything that has been modified in Clear 3 and everything that has been modified in Clear 2, right down to the specific field by field changes. We can push changes back and forth at the field, requirement, or the entire project level. This allows us to fix defects and push that fix out across multiple iterations or variations of a product. This allows us to implement new functionality and push that out to the current systems that contain the same functionality. There are clearly many ways to utilize reuse. These are just some of the more common examples that we have seen our customers utilizing. Hopefully it is clear on how reuse could be applied to you and your industry with the systems that you're building. This concludes our product demonstration for Jama software. To recap what we've covered today, requirements management is at the core of what we do with a heavy focus on collaboration throughout. We walked through change management, impact management, risk and hazard management, and how we can satisfy more of the industry regulatory needs with electronic signatures, full version history, and end-to-end traceability, and more. We walked through test management in a manual level and how Jama can be utilized in conjunction with other tools to satisfy the automated traceability needs as well as the enterprise reuse capabilities with an attempt to eliminate rework in an industry from system to system. Thank you for sitting through the product demonstration with us. We hope it was very helpful and made you hungry to learn more about what Jama has to offer your organization. Please reach out to Jama Software. We are happy to set up a custom live product demonstration and have a deeper dive conversation around how we can help you deliver products faster and with more confidence.